Everyone in the neighborhood loved Frank. For 40 years, same place, same chair, same smile, cutting hair. Children would grow up, get married, bring their own kids to Frank. Generations passed, but Frank never changed. Until the day a customer disrespected him, and neighbors noticed the photo on Frank's wall, taken in Vietnam, showing him wearing the Purple Heart medal. Frank's barbershop had been open on the corner of Elm Street since 1983. The red, white, and blue Barber pole spun every morning at 8, stopped every evening at 6. A faded price list in the window read, haircut, $12, shave, $8, both $18. Frank Kowalski was 73 years old, but every morning he opened his shop on time. Every evening he locked up after the last customer left. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be. They trembled slightly sometimes. But his longtime customers didn't mind, because Frank didn't just cut hair. He was the neighborhood's memory, confidant, and counselor. Tommy Martinez had gotten his first haircut at Frank's when he was 8 years old. Now he was 35 and bringing his own son, Michael. "Uncle Frank," Michael would say, just like his father had said 27 years ago. Maria Santos was the same way. She'd gotten her haircut at Frank's before her high school graduation 15 years ago. Now she was a doctor and still came to Frank before important events. "You bring me luck, Frank," she'd say with a smile. Old Mr. Patterson had been Frank's customer for 40 years. Every Tuesday morning he'd come for a haircut. He was 87 now, barely had any hair left, but he kept coming, just to chat with Frank. The shop was small, 2 barber chairs, but Frank only used one. Photos covered the walls, neighborhood kids' wedding photos, graduation pictures, family portraits. Frank had cut hair for all of them. And in the corner, set slightly apart from the others, hung a single military photograph, black and white, dated 1968. A young soldier, serious expression, Purple Heart medal on his chest. Most customers never paid attention to this photo. Thursday morning, Frank opened his shop at 7:45 as always. He started the coffee machine, arranged the newspapers, checked his scissors. The first customer came at 8:30. David Chen, an accountant who came every 2 weeks. "Morning, Frank. Usual trim, please." "Morning, David. How's the wife and kids?" Frank's hands trembled slightly as he held the scissors, but David didn't mind. He'd been coming to Frank for 12 years. Frank knew his life story. David knew Frank too, or thought he did. At 10 o'clock, Mrs. Rodriguez came in with her teenage son, Alex. Alex was 16, played on the basketball team, had girlfriend problems. "Frank, can you make me look older?" Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. Frank always said the right things. Around noon, old Mr. Patterson arrived. He was in a wheelchair now, with his caregiver, Nurse Betty. "Hello, Frank," Betty said. "Mr. Patterson insisted on coming today." Patterson couldn't speak anymore. He'd had a stroke 6 months ago. But his eyes were still bright, and he smiled when he saw Frank. Frank helped him into the chair, gently trimmed what remained of his hair. "How you feeling today, old friend?" he asked. Patterson gave a thumbs up. "Good." "You know," Frank continued talking, "I was thinking about that fishing trip you always talked about. When you get better, we should finally go." Patterson's eyes lit up. They'd been planning that trip for 20 years, but never managed to go. At 2:30 in the afternoon, someone Frank didn't recognize walked in. 30s, expensive suit, aggressive attitude. His name was Jake Morrison, recently moved to the neighborhood. "I need a haircut, fast. I have a meeting in an hour." "Of course, sir. Please have a seat." Frank began cutting, but Morrison wasn't satisfied. "Careful with those scissors, old man. Your hands are shaking." Frank paused, looked at Morrison. "Sir, I've been cutting hair for 40 years. You're in good hands." 40 years? Maybe it's time to retire. Look at this place. It's like a museum. And those prices? $12 for a haircut? What kind of professional charges so little? Frank tried to remain patient. I keep my prices fair for the neighborhood. Fair? This is unprofessional. Look around. Old photos, old equipment, old man with shaky hands. I should have gone to that fancy salon downtown. There were other customers in the shop. David Chen had come early for his appointment. Mrs. Santos was waiting for a consultation before her daughter's graduation. They all heard Morrison's words. "Sir," Frank said calmly, "perhaps you'd be more comfortable at another establishment." "Oh no, I'm already here. Just try not to butcher my hair, Grandpa." Frank's hand trembled for a moment, but he continued. He'd dealt with customers like this before, over the years. Patience and professionalism, these were his principles. But Morrison didn't stop. "This neighborhood is changing, old man. People with real money are moving in. Your little relic shop won't survive much longer." David Chen looked uncomfortable now. Mrs. Santos was frowning. "You know what?" Morrison stood up. Half-finished haircut and all. "This is ridiculous. I'm not paying for this amateur job." Frank quietly put down his scissors. "Sir, the haircut isn't finished. And it won't be. Keep your antique shop, Grandpa. Just stay out of the way of progress." Morrison walked toward the door, but Mrs. Santos stood up. "Excuse me." David Chen also stood up. "She's right. Frank is a good man. You owe him respect." Morrison laughed. "Respect? For what? For being old and slow?" That's when Mrs. Santos looked at the photo on the wall. The military photo in the corner. Vietnam, 1968. Purple Heart. "Frank," she said slowly, is that you in that photo?" Frank looked at the photo, then at Mrs. Santos. For 40 years that photo had hung there, but no one had ever asked about it. "Yes," he said quietly. "Long time ago." Morrison also looked at the photo. "What? You were in the army or something?" Mrs. Santos walked closer to the photo. "Frank, this says Purple Heart. And the date? 1968? Frank nodded slowly. "Vietnam." David Chen's jaw dropped. "Frank, you never mentioned." "It's not something I talk about," Frank said quietly. Morrison looked skeptical. "Purple Heart? That's a pretty big deal. If you really have one." Frank hesitated, then walked to the back of the shop. From a small safe he took out a small velvet box. Inside was the Purple Heart medal. Purple Heart with George Washington's profile, exactly like in the photo. Mrs. Santos gasped. "Frank, what happened?" Frank took the medal in his hand, years of memories flooding back. "Tet Offensive, January 1968. I was 21, sergeant with 1st Infantry Division. We were in Saigon when the attack started." Morrison was silent now, staring at the medal. "My unit was protecting civilians during evacuation. Sniper fire from a building. 3 of my men were pinned down, wounded. I had to get them out." Frank sat down in his barber chair, turning the medal in his hands. "I went back for them, 3 times. Got them all to safety. But the 3rd time..." Frank rolled up his sleeve, showing old scar tissue on his forearm. Shrapnel from a mortar round. David Chen was speechless. Mrs. Santos had tears in her eyes. "The Purple Heart was for the wounds," Frank continued. "But that's not why I went back. You don't leave your people behind. That's basic." Morrison looked uncomfortable now. Morrison stood there for a moment, looking at Frank, then at the other customers, then back at Frank. He started, then stopped. "Sir, I owe you an apology." Frank looked at him. "No need." "Yes, there is. I was disrespectful. I made assumptions." Frank nodded slowly. "We all make assumptions sometimes." Can you finish my haircut, please?" Frank gestured to the chair. Morrison sat down, but this time quietly. "Mr. Morrison," Frank said, starting to cut again with steady hands, "you mentioned you're new to the neighborhood." "Yes, sir. Just moved here from downtown." "What brings you here?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I wanted somewhere more community-oriented, less corporate. I work in finance. Everything's about profit and efficiency. I thought maybe a neighborhood like this would be different." Frank continued cutting. "It is different. But different doesn't mean old-fashioned or unprofessional. It means people matter more than profit. I can see that now. Mrs. Santos sat back down. Frank, tell us more about Vietnam. Frank considered this while working. What do you want to know? Were you scared? Every day. Fear keeps you alive if you respect it. David asked. How many men did you save? Numbers don't matter. What matters is that they went home to their families. Morrison spoke up. How did you end up here? Cutting hair? Frank smiled slightly. When I came back from Vietnam, I needed something peaceful. Something that helped people instead of war. My uncle was a barber. He taught me the trade. And you've been here 40 years? 42 in December. I bought this place in 1983. Why didn't you ever talk about your service? Frank finished Morrison's haircut, brushed off his shoulders. Because that's not why people come here. They come for a haircut, for conversation, for community. My job is to serve them, not to tell war stories. Morrison looked in the mirror. The haircut was perfect, professional, precise, exactly what he'd wanted. How much do I owe you? $12. Morrison pulled out his wallet, took out a 50. Keep the change. Frank shook his head. That's too much. No, sir, it's not nearly enough. Word spread quickly in the neighborhood. By Friday, Frank's barber shop had a line out the door. People who had never been there before wanted to meet the Vietnam veteran who had been cutting hair quietly for 4 decades. The local newspaper called. They wanted to do a story. Frank politely declined. Channel 7 News showed up. Frank closed early that day. I don't want to be famous, he told Mrs. Santos. I just want to cut hair. But the neighborhood had different ideas. Saturday morning, Frank arrived to find a surprise waiting for him. The entire block was decorated with small American flags. A banner across the street read, "Thank you, Frank, our hero, our barber." Tommy Martinez was there with his son, Michael. David Chen brought his whole family. Mrs. Santos had organized the whole thing. Frank, she said, we don't want you to be famous either. We just want you to know how much you mean to us. Old Mr. Patterson was there too, in his wheelchair. He couldn't speak, but he saluted Frank with a shaky hand. Frank stood in front of his shop, looking at his neighbors, his extended family. You know, he said, finally, when I came back from Vietnam, I wasn't sure how to fit in anymore. Everything seemed different. I felt lost. The crowd listened quietly. But this neighborhood, this shop, all of you gave me a mission again. Not to fight, but to serve. To be part of something bigger than myself. He looked at his shop, then back at the crowd. In Vietnam, we had a saying, leave no one behind. I thought that was just about war. But I was wrong. It's about community. It's about taking care of each other. It's about showing up every day and being reliable. Morrison stepped forward from the crowd. Frank, I owe everyone here an apology too. I moved to this neighborhood thinking I was upgrading it. But the truth is, it was already perfect. I just couldn't see it. Nobody's perfect, Frank replied. But we try to take care of each other. That's what community means. Monday morning, life returned to normal. Frank opened at 8, started the coffee, arranged the newspapers. But something had changed. Young veterans started coming by. Word had spread in the veteran community that there was a Vietnam vet running a barber shop on Elm Street. James Rodriguez, 28, Iraq veteran with PTSD, came in for a haircut and stayed for 2 hours, just talking. How do you do it? He asked Frank. How do you live with it? Frank cut his hair slowly, thinking. One day at a time, and by remembering that the war is over, but the mission continues. What mission? Taking care of people, being useful, finding ways to serve that don't involve fighting. More young veterans followed. Frank never advertised it, never made a big deal about it, but somehow his barber shop became an unofficial gathering place for veterans who needed someone who understood. Morrison came back too, every 2 weeks. Always polite, always respectful. He'd started volunteering at the community center, helping with financial literacy classes. "You changed me," he told Frank one day. "No," Frank replied. "You changed yourself. I just cut your hair." 1 year later,
"Frank, you have to accept this award." "I don't need awards. I have everything I need right here. It's not about what you need. It's about showing other veterans that there's life after service, that they can find new missions." Frank considered this. In the past year, he'd met dozens of young veterans, some struggling, some thriving, all looking for purpose. "All right," he said finally, "but I'm not giving a speech." The award ceremony was held at the community center. Frank wore his best suit and his Purple Heart. The entire neighborhood attended. When they called his name, Frank walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. Veterans, neighbors, children he'd watched grow up, families he'd served for decades. "I wasn't going to give a speech," he began, "but I changed my mind." He paused, looking at the faces in front of him. "In Vietnam, I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done, despite the fear. When I came home, I was afraid I'd lost my purpose. I was wrong." He looked at the young veterans in the audience. "Service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It just changes form. For me, it became a barber shop. For others, it might be teaching, or coaching, or building, or healing. The mission is the same. Take care of your people." Frank held up the award. "This belongs to everyone who chose to serve their community in whatever way they could. Because that's what veterans do. We adapt, we overcome, and we never stop serving." 3 years later, Frank's barbershop is still on the corner of Elm Street. Frank is 76 now. His hands shake a little more, but he still opens every morning at 8 and closes every evening at 6. The neighborhood has changed some. Morrison helped establish a veteran support group that meets at the community center. Young veterans from all over the city come to Frank's shop, not just for haircuts, but for advice, for understanding, for community. Frank's walls now have more photos, veterans he's helped, families he's served, community events he's supported. The old Vietnam photo is still there, in the corner, but it's not alone anymore. Last week, Tommy Martinez brought his son Michael for his first grown-up haircut. Michael's 12 now, nervous about starting middle school. "Uncle Frank," Michael asked, "were you really in a war?" Frank smiled, adjusting the cape around Michael's shoulders. "Yes, son, a long time ago." "Were you brave?" Frank thought about this while he started cutting. "I tried to be, but you know what real bravery is?" "What?" "Showing up every day to take care of the people you love. Being there when they need you. That's the kind of bravery that matters most." Michael nodded seriously. "Like how you take care of the neighborhood? Like how we all take care of each other." Frank finished the haircut and turned Michael toward the mirror. "What do you think?" Michael grinned. "I look grown up."
"You look like a young man who's ready for whatever comes next." As Tommy paid for the haircut, he whispered to Frank, "Thank you for everything, for being here all these years." Frank nodded. "Where else would I be? This is my post." Outside, the red, white, and blue Barber pole continued to turn just as it had for 40 years, a beacon of service, community, and the understanding that true honor isn't in the medals you earn, but in the lives you touch every single day. The end.